So let me introduce you our guests today. I think we can sit on those 3 chairs. We have Francisco Vaz Figueiredo, co-founder and CEO of GovWise. We have Afonso Fonseca, director of product in Visor.ai, and Robert Koller, CEO and founder of NowCM. Right? So probably I think that it makes sense for us to start with you telling us a little bit about your companies and what you do and what kind of business problem you're trying to solve. So, Robert, if you want to start.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for having me here today. It's a great pleasure speaking here in front of this audience. My name is Robert Koller. I'm a lawyer by training, so maybe a little bit strange for you. But I run NowCM, which stands for Now Capital Markets, and which is a company that has as its goal to digitalize capital markets. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with capital markets, but just to give you a little bit of a feeling, the biggest IT inventions in capital markets were the introduction of email and Microsoft Word in the past 50 years. So there's a lot of things to do. And we follow here a simple recipe, which we call APP, or app, which is access, process, and price discovery. Access means we want to give companies an easier access to capital markets, so you're not depending anymore on your bank alone. Process is the entire process, which I can speak later a little bit about it, and very manual at the moment, to make it digital and machine readable, and price discovery to find pricing online and in real time. At the moment, capital markets are somewhere between 5 and 30 days in terms of settlement and execution, which in the year 2023 is just incredible that this is still so slow.
Okay, very good. So you want to...
Okay. My name is Francisco Vaz. I'm CEO and co-founder of GovWise. Thanks for having me, first of all. So GovWise is a productivity tool for all the players involved in public procurement. We use AI to automate tasks and to deliver a decision-making tool for this, both for companies or public entities that, that are selling or buying in the public sector. We are R&D with the academia built project since 2020, right before the pandemic. We have our product in the market for a year now, 20 customers, so we basically are what would be called a startup. Our customers are, for now, the majority are companies, like, I can give some examples, like Vodafone, Cisco, Red Hat, that use our platform to basically apply AI on a high regulated process when they are competing for public contracts. And lastly, we are an Iberia company, and in fact, a cloud native company, but we will go over that for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it.
Very good, thank you. Afonso?
Okay, so hi everyone. First of all, glad to be here, thrilled to be here. So I'm Afonso Fonseca, I'm Director of Product at Visor.ai, but I'm also the responsible for software development and cloud infrastructure. At Visor, we automate interactions of our clients' customer service departments, and we do that using chatbots and AI. The way our product works is we give a back office, a web application, obviously hosted on the cloud. We give that application to our clients to set up a chatbot, giving him knowledge, teaching him how to answer different questions, and then the clients, after having all the setup done, they can deploy that solution on their different communication channels. And for instance, Messenger, WhatsApp, or even their own web page with his own chatbots. and now more recently at voice channels, so EVRs. Our main clients, we focus mainly on big enterprises, such as banks and insurance companies, where obviously their #1 concern is the security of their data and obviously maintaining their data intact. And we do that by providing everything cloud-based and obviously secured.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. So you probably you participate in the cloud space both from the buyer side perspective and the seller side perspective as well. So let us start with the seller side, and I would like to ask you, when you thought about your company, your product, your service, how did you come about with how you were going to provide that service to your end customers, and why cloud became such an obvious answer? So,
Sure,
Robert.
yeah. So in order to explain this, I need to dive a little bit into how the process works now. So capital markets, to issue bond and borrow money from the public markets, we do this at the moment with lots of lawyers. In one transaction, you might have 30, 40 different parties that are involved. And everything is done manually. So you write a document, and this is then sent around by email, then it's commented with track changes, and we even get fax still, or scanned handwritten markups. And you have all these parties that have to cooperate between 80 and 120 steps to produce this money borrowing and the documentation for it. So as a lawyer, I just thought this is ridiculous that I need to do all this manually with all the tools that we have at hand. So the first question is, how do we bring all these parties? Everybody is in a silo, one after another, adding cost, adding time, and not knowing what the next one is doing, into one ecosystem where they all can work together with the golden source of truth. Because each of these silos, they get the data and then they type it into different systems manually, and there's so many errors that happen. So it was a very obvious choice to put this on the cloud and to bring all these parties together. But as Afonso said, we're also working with big banks, global banks, insurance companies, and big corporates. So for them, security is super important. And also the integrity and ownership of the data. So all of this had to be clarified, and we had to create a big, let's say, contractual framework around of this, so that everyone can work in the data. And now we're a cloud-centric, API-first company, which can connect to the banks, to the clearing systems, and all these parties that are involved, without having to type in all this data time and time again and making errors. So for us, it was very clear to bring this together. The one thing where we had to make it a little bit different is when you say we collaborate in documents, it doesn't sound like something very sophisticated. You think of Google Docs or Microsoft Word Online. Due to security and permissioning, people cannot work in the same document. And to make, just to visualize what all the information that are in, for example, 400-page bond prospectus, we had to create a data model that is about 5,000 variables and 10,000 business rules, which underlie all of this. So without this, let's say, comprehensive data model that is deployed in the cloud, this wouldn't be possible either. And that's why we also needed, let's say, a grown-up cloud provider to provide the capacity for.
Okay. We'll get there later.
Yeah.
So how about GovWise?
Yeah, Robert approached a few topics on the benefits of creating a cloud and software as a service product, scalability, security, and so forth. But I would start to I was listening Fortinet presentations a while, and the title was "Cloud as a Strategy, not as a Technology." So it starts there, you know. So if you look, cloud has been around for, I don't know, 20 years, 20, 30 years, something like that. So what we want to build is a product that delivers, that could be scalable. So that's the first. So I think all of us want a product with as many customers as possible, right? So that's the first topic. Afterwards, we want to deliver and want to be competitive in our industries, and if we want to deliver to the customer, independently if it's companies or public sector or whatever, we want them to experience the most updated product as a whole. We want them to have the latest version of our developments on the product, you know. So this is what cloud provides, right? So in the beginning of any product or company, for me, new products and new services must be cloud-based. Of course, not how the industries are set up with legacy systems and on-premises and whatnot. It could be more difficult to a big enterprise to launch this, but we had an example right now. I think it was Noj that was presenting. Okay, create a new company, create a new product, create a new service. Let's base this on cloud. So yeah, so we are in the beginning, and we for now we want to provide out to our customers and to build a product that run 100% on cloud. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe let me start from the beginning in explaining how cloud impacted our timeline and how we're growing with cloud. So when we started, we were 4 people participating on an hackathon for Lisbon City Hall. It was an hackathon that during 2 days we had to deploy a solution to help the Lisbon City Hall citizens. And we came up with an idea that was deploy a chatbot for Messenger, where citizens could report incidents on the streets through the chatbot. And we were able to do that because we deployed, obviously, we started a few servers, created a database, and all that on cloud. And we only were able to do that because we were talking about cloud. We could deploy those servers in 2 days and present a solution at the end of the program because of that. And gladly, we won the client, and Lisbon City Hall became our #1 client, our first client as a pilot, and they still are working with us, which is great. And from then, since then, 6 years ago until now, we are still using cloud completely for everything. And it makes part of my day-to-day basis, it makes part of my day actions to handle a few things about cloud. But I think 2 very important topics when we are talking about cloud is the possibility, is the adaptability. So as a startup, we start small and obviously we want to scale, we want to grow fast. And cloud provides us that. And what I mean with this is, when you have 1 client and you pass to 2 clients and then 5 and then 10, you have to scale your solution. And servers might become expensive, but if you adapt, if you can have your servers auto-scaling, and what I mean with auto-scaling is scaling horizontally or vertically, and by that I mean, let's imagine that you start having a lot of demand, a lot of requests for your products, because you passed from 1 server from 1 client to 2 clients and for 5 clients, then our solution will deploy automatically other servers using the same solution, providing the same solution. Or vertically, that if the request is too demanding, then the server will start to use more CPU, more RAM. This is a bit technical, but I think it's important to mention, because if we don't have that auto-scaling, either we started with a small server, really limited, or you'll start paying a lot for a bigger server. And that's really important for a startup when it's growing, because every cost it's important. So we try to reduce the cost of the server, and since we are a software company, servers are a big part of the company, and it's really expensive. So I guess adaptability is important here. And last but not least, and also a bit technical, but the part of the maintenance. So when we started, we were 4 people. And I consider until now that I've used many hats in the company, and I guess that's normal on a startup. And one of these hats is DevOps. I'm not a professional DevOps, but I believe that I know our infrastructure and I know where we want to go in terms of architecture. But one thing that is really time-consuming and saved us a lot of time is we don't have to handle the maintenance part. We don't have to take care of the servers. We don't have to update software, operating systems, and firmware. And also, there's the part of the support. So if we need any help with the database, that takes a lot of time to handle. If we need any help with the database or the servers, we can ask the AWS employees. By the way, AWS is our provider, our cloud provider since the beginning. We can ask AWS employees to help us maintain the server, obviously, or support with any questions that we might have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, very interesting. So now let's focus on your buyer side in terms of cloud, and it's good that you mentioned the cloud providers, because I would like to ask you things that we learned here this morning regarding having or not multiple cloud providers, and whether if your decisions, the ones that you made right in the beginning, are still valid today, or whether you have to adapt and revisit those decisions because now you've grown and those decisions are not the best decisions that you might have taken. So how do you go about taking those decisions, and whether, let's focus first on whether you go for a single cloud provider or multiple cloud providers, and whether that makes sense or not for a company that is still in this growing phase.
Yeah, I'll happy to jump on this. So, surprisingly, still at this time and age, the banks haven't approved all cloud providers. So very often we come across banks that say we work with this one, but we don't work with that one. So for us, from the beginning, we had to be very cloud neutral and have the possibility of being multi-cloud. Because everything in a bank takes for ages, and if you are on one cloud which is not approved by them, you're just not eligible as a client. So I think in the meantime we get at least the 3 big providers are approved, but we still come across that. In the beginning it was very helpful for us to have a big provider where there's a lot of tools that you can use and implement. It then adds up to the cost, as you said, because the more tools you use, the more expensive it gets. And of course, the more tied you're into one cloud. So I think that's one aspect to see. But what you also mentioned in terms of buyers is the cloud is the tool that actually facilitates network effects. And capital markets is a very niche area. There's very few people work there, but it's one of the largest markets in the world. About 50 trillion every year in debt is issued. And all these people need to interact in one place together. And we had, for example, some competitors, which recently we bought. They deployed single on-premise solutions. And that business model didn't work because in order to have an ecosystem, you cannot just provide a software and here run it on your own cloud and see and onboard your clients. You need one place where everybody is working together, and that is really that creates then the network effects and makes it useful for all participants.
Okay, let me just ask you regarding your process, your specific process. Was it easy to start with one cloud provider and then go to the next and then expand to the next, or is it like starting all over again every time you go to a new cloud provider?
I could say now the marketing speech, but I tell you honestly, there's a lot of refactoring going on. So taking out the tools that we used from one cloud provider and replacing them with more neutral tools is a lot of work, and especially we've bought now several companies that had similar setups, so in order to bring them all in the same cloud, there's a lot of work to do, so it's not so easy. Okay. But it's understandably because the cloud providers, they make business out of this. So.
Yeah, probably. In GovWise, do you have a single provider? You have multiple cloud providers? How do you manage?
Yeah, we have multi-cloud providers. Well, it comes. I will start for the beginning. Like, okay, it's almost everything is strategy, but I'll go specifically. So first, for example, in terms of computing, we started. I will mention some names here, but it's not about quality, okay? But we started by using AWS Cloud, but our technical team, had more, let's say, more easy to use on Azure. Okay, we switched. Of course, it has a few effort on plugging and plugging stuff on our product, but as a cloud provider, so we basically turn off and turn on the other one. So of course we need to know the system. We need to have that phase of onboarding, to use and to apply on our product, but it runs very smoothly. And of course, it's all related to strategy and cost, because so we want to scale. We recently closed the funding round, so we need to present to investors that we are moving in the right way in terms of costs and profitability on our product. So yeah, it's just to wrap up. It's very easy if you have your team on board and if you know clearly the strategy. This is in terms of computing. I will put also again strategy. So we wanted to be a remote only company. So to do that, okay, we need the best tools to provide to our team, collaboration tools. Once again, okay, let's go to the cloud market and see what collaborative tools do we have to build a remote only tool. Okay, I could mention some names also, but I know that I can mention one that is a startup that is recently a unicorn, that is Factorial HR, okay? We tested, it's very easy, okay? Easy setup, put the team using, delivering assessments and whatnot. Yeah, and it works, okay? Other example, okay, we are an artificial intelligence on the core company. Of course, we deliver a productivity tool to companies and to public sectors, but and that's our focus. Okay, but we think, okay, but the core is artificial intelligence. What about the UI and the UX, so the front end? Okay, low code or no code. Okay, let's see what's on the market. Let's try it. So we defined and we went. So the product we have running to the customers in terms of front end also built with a web development based on low code that works. And we have basically support. We have efficiency. We have small downtimes, because also these companies, these cloud providers, in terms of front end, so they have their struggles, of course. But yeah, if we manage to choose the right cloud providers and to know their SLAs and so forth, we think we can build a product on the buyer's side, very efficient and very profitable.
Okay. Yeah. Afonso, so you already told us that you're focusing on AWS. why not using more than AWS? So what is the decision behind having a single cloud provider?
Yeah, it's curious that you talk about that because in reality, we are still using AWS. And maybe to explain a bit more about multi-cloud solutions that we want to implement in the future, because it makes part of our plan, because we understand that companies nowadays obviously have to have their own solution deployed in different clouds because of a lot of reasons. And maybe it can be a governance part, or maybe because one cloud provider can give you a better solution or a better tool that the other cannot, and you have to switch really fast. And maybe I'll start by telling something that, for me, personally, I live by that rule in terms of professionally how I live my life. Is that like Mark Zuckerberg, like years ago, mentions during his golden age, he mentioned like his motto for Facebook was to move fast and break things. And there's a lot of meaning in there. And what it means is to be fast to adapt to new solutions, and to break things is to disrupt. So mainly for software, obviously this can be applied to any sector or any company, but in software you have to experiment, you have to create minimal valuable products and proof of concepts, and understand if that makes sense to as a product to our clients. So if it can disrupt any sector. Which brings me to, obviously, the new trend, the new technology of generative AI, such as ChatGPT. And we started recently using ChatGPT. And the ChatGPT that everyone can use, every time you input something, that information will go to their OpenAI. And OpenAI will use that data for training their model. Obviously, that's not a reality that we can provide our clients. But recently, we start using Azure with OpenAI. We started getting the license to start using ChatGPT. And with that, we can start using the client's data without obviously affecting any data of our clients, because the data that stays on Azure on the server will stay there, will not be used by OpenAI. And we already deploying new features and new solutions on our product using ChatGPT. Which brings me to the part of the multi-cloud solutions that obviously we want to remain in AWS, but we can see now there are some advantages in Azure. So obviously we started already deploying the solutions to Azure and start using ChatGPT. And I guess this only can be applied on cloud solutions, because let's imagine that we had on-prem solution. And if you want to start using ChatGPT, that would be impossible. At least if you want to start using ChatGPT, you had to deploy a solution with ChatGPT behind on the server locally, and that's really expensive. So I guess on-prem solutions start to being a lot slower adapting to new technology, and ChatGPT disrupt everything, as you can see, in a matter of months. And obviously, we have to adapt fast. So we had to shift a bit our plan and start using a different cloud provider. And yeah, to start using ChatGPT. And I guess maybe when we start getting bigger, it might make sense using on-prem solutions, because when they are handling hundreds and millions of clients, cloud solution might be a bit expensive, and on-prem might be a viable option. But the moment you do that, you'll be much slower. But I guess that's part of the company life cycle, I guess. So yeah, I think the way we are thinking to start using different clouds is one reason is to adapt it, to start using a new technology, a new disruptive technology, and try something new there. For us, at least, I think that's the reason why we are shifting our ways to Azure now, but still remaining with AWS, of course.
Okay, good. So Francisco already mentioned several times, and it was mentioned this morning as well, costs, right? So cloud costs can explode really quickly if you're not really on top of that. So how do you manage costs? Is it something that you sleep at night, or is it something that makes you nervous?
I have to say we're a little bit lucky in this context, because we're not a multi-million multiplayer game or so. We don't need a lot of computing power because per year, the 50 trillion that I mentioned, dollars that are issued, it's less than 20,000 bonds. So the numbers in terms of quantity, not in terms of money moved, but of people involved, is relatively slow. So for us, this is relatively manageable because the market is so niche. But even there, we see that we have a subsidiary in France where we run a marketplace. And as I said, we just bought another company in the UK, adding the 3 instances of cloud providers on top accumulates quite quickly still. So we still try to optimize it and put it into single instances.
Let me just do a follow-up question, because even if costs are not really a concern for you, I'm sure that data privacy and security is very much top of your mind. So focus on that then.
Yeah.
If it's not costs, then is it security and data privacy? Because I imagine that if something leaks, or it should be a problem, right?
Very much so. I mean, working in financial services means you've got insider trading issues and so on. So you cannot act on the information. All data needs to be encrypted at rest and in transit. And we need to know very clearly where the data is stored. So for us, having a cloud provider that has the relevant regions that we can limit and which has also the fallbacks, and you know that not suddenly the data will be transferred to another data center in the US because we had that actually, a funny side story. When we started, we used the French cloud provider, and we had our demo servers there, and the data center burned down, which I heard happens every 10 years statistically, but it affected big parts of the internet, and they couldn't actually replace, although we contracted all the services, our demo servers. So we looked very much in replicability, in distribution, and securities from. Luckily, it happened very much at the beginning.
Good. Francisco.
Okay, yeah, so costs. Well, I would say that our CTO doesn't sleep on that, yeah. Or basically is regularly identifying, so what's the cloud cost that we have been having, and estimating what we will have according to the data we will scrape, we will put on our system. We have an advantage here that that is we collect open data, so whatever the web it is regarding public procurement. So we train models and we run that models on the data, but we are not using high computing systems like CPUs, GPUs, I think. Yeah, CPUs, GPUs. It's the same thing. So as soon as we start, using that systems, the cost per unit, let's say, will rise up. Of course, it comparative with non-cloud solutions, still very profitable, very reasonable. Okay, but yeah, it's an issue. Of course, we have also always to compare what type of revenues and customers are we bringing in, and advancing on the investment we need on cloud solutions, on computing. But for sure, that's the topic, because as Afonso said, it's one, if not the major cost source of each cloud-based startup or company. Just give you another example. In terms of costs, one thing that we know by focusing on cloud is that we can use very simply and cost efficiently new generative technology, generative AI technologies. So, and that they are basically, I think, Afonso is maybe Robert and Afonso are more expert on this, but it's cost efficient to start using. So if it's cost efficient to start using and testing, we can, it fits the budget, you know, it fits the budget. So if we have this in mind, we can move forward, we can remain profitable, we can get customers, and, you know, investing as time goes by.
Okay, so where the data is sitting is not a concern for you. So because it's open data, so you don't care whether the cloud provider is in the US or in Europe or anywhere.
Yeah, no, for sure. Of course, we need to manage how the data is structured and or independently where it is, if it's in Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud, or whatever. But yeah, we of course, security is a thing that we need to have our mind open, to be top of mind also. But we know for a fact that the most secure networks and clouds are for this provider. So they have very strong and very redundant systems. So yeah, we remain comfortable with that. Yeah.
I think maybe if I may add to this in terms of security, I think there's only that much that you can do if you're facing state actors. I think since the news that even the source code from Google search engine was stolen, I think we're all a bit more realistic. But let's say for the normal type of security, this gives you a very good starting point.
Yeah, of course. And Afonso, how about you?
Yeah,
costs and security.
Yeah, of course. So costs have to be reviewed weekly, obviously. And I guess cloud providers know exactly the solution they have there. So it's quite expensive, I must tell. It's quite expensive, and obviously when you start to have servers more demanding, and you have the part of the AI, like Francisco said, it's real demanding in terms of CPU, in terms of machines. Obviously, that's expensive. But like I said previously, if you have a solution that auto-scales, you can take the best of it. You can only pay for exactly what you are using and no more, no less. And that's really important. But I guess that in terms of security, obviously, it's also a concern. And what we do with our clients in terms of, obviously, we have a security and assessment that we have to fill at the beginning, is the part of the region, like you said. And it's important to mention the region because we have to have different backups and different information in different regions of Europe. So you have to be compliant with a lot of regulations, obviously, and you have to be your solution deployed in a lot of servers, has backups. And then you have the part of disaster recovery, and now more recently, the cyber recovery, that it's really important. And we are still reaching the moment that we are start talking about cyber recovery, but so far we are with disaster recovery, and it's very important because if a server burns down, they have to have a backup, so right?
They should.
So they should have, at least, and when we, obviously, we fill the assessment, security assessments, we obviously provide that. And then we have the other part of the security that is also expensive, but I think the moment that you sell this kind of solution, that is VPCs, you have to come to an agreement with your clients because it's very is high expense. So what virtual VPC stands for, virtual private cloud, and without getting into much detail, what it means is you can deploy a server or a database on the internet, but isolated. You have your own server isolated. And for a few banks and insurance companies, we provide that. So they have our own product on the isolated part of the internet, and that every information there will remain intact, and obviously the data on the database will remain intact, and they are secure there. And I think that's a very important step for clouds. VPCs are, it's not a new topic, but it's getting easier to use day by day, and we understand that because we use them. And yeah, I think there's a real advantage because so far on-prem solutions had the security part, and it's the biggest advantage, I guess, on on-prem solutions is the security. But now with VPCs, we can have clients isolated and intact and secure. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah,
one
Robert.
more thing. In terms of scalability, it's not only that you get more servers or higher CPU usage, it's also in terms of geographic expansion. So we've just now signed an agreement with the Singapore Stock Exchange, and we will need to have data saved in Asia, ideally in Singapore. So building this for us, our own data center in Asia is a no-go.
Yeah.
So that's also one of the big advantages that these cloud providers offer with global coverage. Yeah.
Of course. So another topic that we listened to this morning was performance and how hard it is to pinpoint whether you have a performance issue, to know exactly where is it coming from. So is it something that you actively manage and track in your companies? Is it a problem for your day-to-day operations? So how do you manage and monitor performance with your cloud providers?
That is a big issue, actually. So when we first automated our first prospectus with our data model, we broke the servers of the cloud provider, and it took 3 months to upgrade it so that it actually could handle that. It was 10 years ago. But we deal with a very fast-moving environment, so bankers don't have a lot of time. If they need to wait 60 seconds until a document is produced, they already get bored, and the market has moved on. So we're constantly looking how to improve this, either via refactoring our own software or increasing the power of the cloud provider. And time seems to really, 60 seconds. When we were in an email age, no one would even think about that. But when you're online on the cloud, everything needs to go instantly, and no one wants to have an hourglass waiting there.
Yeah.
Well, the answer is also with the cloud tools and solutions regarding monitoring, right? Of course, the monitoring tools that of our cloud providers, for sure, but other ones that are already available. I could say that we use Grafana, for example, that basically can verify our scrapers, so our data path and where is failing. To give you an example, we had an issue yesterday, and all the notifications popped up for me to the CTO, interface not working, So yeah, but the answer is monitoring tools, cloud monitoring tools, easily set up, that gives the product owners and the DevOps team, the notifications to, and part of these tools use AI already, so they can even, predict what is going on or what could be wrong in the near future. So we have, of course, also a proactive approach to figure out if something is going wrong, because we are deploying very quickly new stuff. But we have cloud tools that help us and that are easy to set up and that notify us. Okay.
And Afonso, how about you?
Yeah, so a bit ago was, I can't quite remember the name, but was someone from NowCM talking about APMs. Mm-hmm. And that is tools that let us understand if there is some problem with the server or if there's some leak of RAM. And one of the providers that he was showing was Datadog, and Datadog is the tool that we use for monitoring everything. And it's really a really powerful tool that gets everything, and has AI, like Francisco said. And it can prevent problems by understanding patterns on the logs or on the CPU or RAM, and reports before the problem happening. So obviously, every day people are getting more demanding in terms of performance, and no one wants to wait more than a second for a page to load. And that's perfectly normal, because technology is evolving ridiculously fast. And I guess the reason why we start using this tool is because of that. Obviously, it's common for people, for coders, for developers to put a small bug that may deploy a RAM leakage. It's normal, but how fast we can answer to that, that's the important part. And obviously, it's very important, because the moment that we don't have our solution live, our clients are not happy. So we have to have always our solution live. In any kind of report, any kind of problem, we have to receive an email, a report of any incident from this Datadog or any other provider.
Okay, good. So we are almost running out of time, but I would like to ask you a final question, which is, if you had to select one piece of advice to give to someone starting now in their cloud journey, what would be that piece of advice?
Well, I think it's really study your environment first and then take the decisions. That is really most important, I think.
Okay.
I will end as I started. It's all about strategy, to choose the two, three, four main strategic paths for your project, for your company, and see how cloud could apply to them. Yeah, 100% cloud.
Okay, so for me, I guess it's don't be afraid of start experimenting with infrastructures. Like I said, I wasn't a DevOps, and I'm still not a DevOps, but I know how that works, and it's not that hard, and that has a lot of advantages starting using cloud. So the faster you get used to use clouds, the faster you can deploy solutions and test it out and see if your project works.
Okay, very good. So thank you so much. I think it was very interesting, and thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.